Hi there! In this video I'm showcasing a full Gunsmoke battle using the current burn team and explain my thought process as I go along, since I've had multiple comments asking for skill order, survival and buff uptime. I quickly put this together before the season of Gunsmoke is over to hopefully make it clearer how the team is played against the boss. The investment level of my characters is kind of free to play-ish. I buy the monthly $5 pack, but since I have the bad habit of losing every 50-50, my account doesn't really reflect any spending. That said, my Vector is V0 using Svarog. She equips the fixed keys for support actions, 15% fixed damage against large targets, and 3 confectance points at the start of battle. She's my highest HP character at around 3.5k HP. Since she's V0, she's mostly here for the incineration tiles, as the boss is not weak to fire. Sharkry is V6 using AR1 Planeta, with keys for her support actions and both keys which grant her Blazing Assault. She's my lowest HP character at around 2.8k HP. If you have a well-built Macchiato available, you could use her instead, since Sharkry doesn't yet benefit much from Vector. I prefer to use Macchiato on the other team though. Ksenia is V6 using a fully calibrated Stechkin. Her keys grant her confectance points when she has heat recovery, apply the buffs of her S2 also to herself, and of course the debuff cleanse. If you have Centaur Racy, she is pretty good for this fight as well. Qiongjiu is V3 using AR1 Golden Melody. Her keys grant Blazing Assault when using her S1, 3 confectance points at the start of battle, and the Defense Shred, which you technically don't need when also using Kluke. The only other key worth considering for this fight would be the one that makes her immune to knockbacks, but honestly it's not worth swapping her keys around. She's also using Death Knell, the common key from Vector. If your Qiongjiu is not V3, the team's going to feel bad to play. The borrowed Kluke is V6 using AR1 Skiller. Most importantly, she needs to have her fixed key strong support equipped, so that she can reset her ultimate cooldown via support actions. I start the battle with Kluke so that she can apply Corrosive Infusion to the boss and begin recharging her ultimate via the team support actions. Since Kluke is still ramping up and the boss is benefiting from its damage reduction due to its stability shield, we don't need to immediately buff Kluke with Ksenia. Instead, I use QJ's ultimate and put Blazing Assault on her for the next 2 turns. Then Vector uses her ultimate. I position her away from the group so that everyone gets hit by the boss S2 only once, because it focuses the highest and lowest HP allies. Since the boss doesn't have any burn debuffs at this point, I can't apply Overburn with her S1, which would otherwise be the ideal play. Therefore, I use her S2 which deals slightly lower damage and save her S1 for the next turn. Sharkry couldn't fully recharge her Confectance Index, so I only get to zoom in once. I position her in the middle of the group, since she is the lowest HP character. I'm using Sharkry's S1 for another instance of Overburn to trigger hers and Vector's support actions. I didn't manage to fully break the boss, so its S1 hits everyone. Otherwise, the targets would have been Kluke and QJ. If the HP of your allies is very close to each other, that might lead to one of the two becoming your lowest HP character, potentially messing up the targeting for the debuff. I generally prefer to have Kluke or QJ soak extra hits, since Ksenia's heals preferably go to them for Blazing Assault. On turn 2, I start by buffing Kluke. I also reposition the team out of the swamp tiles because I deal 50% fixed damage to allies ending their turn on them. Since Ksenia has her 5th fixed key equipped, this cleanses the debuff from Kluke. And with Ksenia's 4th fixed key, she gains the same buffs as her target, meaning she also receives the cleanse, leading to 2 stacks of Saliva Dipped, the defense ignore buff from the boss. Now Kluke makes her move. I position her closest to the boss, so that she can eat one of the hits from its S1. Next, QJ uses her S1 because she still has 2 stacks of support boost left. The team struggles a bit with single target attacks because Ksenia and Kluke don't contribute any. As a result, I'm alternating QJ's ultimate and S1 throughout the fight. Her S1 triggers a support action from Ksenia, which applies Blazing Assault, thereby cleansing QJ. Now, everyone is at 3 stacks of Saliva Dipped with 2 turns duration. The interaction between Ksenia's support actions and the debuff cleansing leads to a more dynamic rotation than you might normally do, since maintaining the Def Ignore buff is crucial. Then it's Sharkry's turn. At full confectance points, I use her ultimate twice to stack up Zoom In and use her S2. This triggers the second support action from Ksenia, cleansing Sharkry as well, and granting a 4th stack of Saliva Dipped. Note that this cleanse happens before the end of the character's action, so the buff duration is lowered to only 1 turn for Sharkry, despite having just received a new stack. Finally, Vector uses her S1, applying Overburn, triggering Sharkry twice with this attack. On this turn, I managed to get 15 hits into the boss, so the vulnerability debuff is fully stacked for the next turn. With this positioning, the boss attacked Kluke and Ksenia. This works well because Kluke is the preferred target for Ksenia's healing, and Ksenia receives heat recovery by using her S2. On turn 3, the stacking defense ignore buff Saliva Dipped has 2 turns duration on everyone that acted before the final cleanse on the previous turn, namely Kluke, Ksenia and Qiongjiu, whereas only 1 turn duration remains on Sharkry and Vector. Therefore, we have to cleanse Vector before attacking with Sharkry. First, Qiongjiu uses her ultimate. Then, Ksenia heals and buffs her up, making her the highest HP target for the boss. Kluke still has Blazing Assault for this turn. She uses her ultimate and kills the ad. Note that due to this secondary target, her key One Fell Swoop won't activate on this attack. This might be one of the occasions where No Mercy pulls slightly ahead. I positioned the rest of the team away from Qiongjiu, so that the Corrosion AoE hits each member only once. Now that Vector and Sharkry are left with 1 turn duration on Saliva Dipped, I have Vector attack first with her S2 to trigger Ksenia's support action. The cleanse adds the 5th stack of the buff and refreshes the duration for everyone. Because Vector received the stack during her attack, the duration was lowered by a turn at the end of her action. Due to her cooldowns, Sharkry can only use a basic attack, for which I zoom in only once. On turn 4, the debuff cleansing begins anew. Ksenia reapplies Blazing Assault to Kluke and increases the stack count to 7. Since the boss is not yet stability broken, I'm delaying Kluke's action on this turn. Instead, I attack with Sharkry using a double ultimate plus S1 combo. Ksenia's assist cleanses Sharkry for an 8th stack, and the stability breaks before Sharkry's skill damage kicks in, granting her unmitigated damage for this attack. Due to the double overburn application, multiple support actions follow suit. Now it's high time to use Kluke, since she needs support actions to reset her ultimate cooldown. Qiongjiu has 1 stack of support boost left, which would be enough to assist Vector's upcoming attack. Here, it doesn't make much of a difference whether you use her ultimate first and S1 second or vice versa, because her Blazing Assault still lasts until the next turn. On turn 5, I start by using Qiongjiu's S1. She still carries the debuff from the previous turn, so with Ksenia's assist she receives the cleanse and the buff duration is refreshed for everyone. Sharkry's health is starting to look critical, so I give her the heal from Ksenia. Kluke and Qiongjiu both have Blazing Assault up, so this works out. Kluke's ultimate still has 2 turns cooldown, because we had to delay her action on the previous turn. Therefore, I'm using Vector's S2 next to trigger 4 support actions in total. This resets Kluke's ultimate, which she can use to take care of the boss at. Then it's Sharkry's time to shine. At full Confectance Index, she can do a double ult plus S2 combo. I position her away from the group, as she's now the highest HP target following the heal from Ksenia. Note that this time the boss S1 will focus only the nearest and furthest ally, so if Kluke wasn't among the 2 targets, she might have become the highest HP character on the team, messing up the positioning. On turn 6, we again need to make sure that we cleanse a debuff so that no one loses the 10 stacks of Saliva Dipped. Since the team's health looks acceptable, I choose Kluke for Ksenia's S2 to reapply Blazing Assault. Then, Kluke uses her ultimate again. Because Vector's ultimate is available this turn, we don't need to avoid swarm tiles. Next, Qiongjiu uses her ultimate. Then Vector follows up with her ultimate and S1 combo. This cleanses another debuff and increases the stack count to 13. Now Sharkry has to make do with her basic attack, which triggers the second cleanse from Ksenia, increasing the stack count to 14. On turn 7, I cleanse Qiongjiu for the 15th stack, though I guess at this point an attack from Ksenia would have been okay as well. Because the boss is not yet stability broken, I delay Kluke's action and start with Vector's S2. Then Kluke can go in to take care of the ad for the attack buff. Next is Sharkry with her double ult plus S1. Then Qiongjiu with another S1 to conclude the fight. The positioning doesn't matter at the end of turn 7. That brings us to the end of this battle. I know the score is not impressive, but I hope the thought process is clear and reproducible. Due to the lack of single target attacks and the interaction between Nemertea and Ksenia's cleanse mechanics, the rotation is more dynamic than you'd normally expect. In the future, the gameplay will be much more streamlined to the point where Qiongjiu uses the ultimate first every turn, followed by Vector, then Sharkry, and finally Qiwa, never having to put a thought into it. If you enjoy autoplay, there's something to look forward to. That said, for this fight a setup with Suomi is much more comfortable. The Corrosion trio with Ice Duo feels particularly convenient. You just use Suomi to cleanse, and the shield sustains you through all damage, allowing you to stay in place for the entire battle. On a final note, since this came up on the Discord, you'll likely encounter a red defense penetration indicator during this fight, due to the stacking buff. This defense penetration exceeding 100% is referred to as negative defense, but only physical damage dealers with Yohi's buff gain any benefits from this. To demonstrate this, here's Macchiato using her as 1 on turn 3 with 160% defense penetration, and on turn 7 with 230%. The attack buffs are identical between the two turns, though Petya applied 10% vulnerability to the boss on turn 3, slightly increasing the damage on the left. Subtracting the impact of the vulnerability debuff, there's no difference in damage for a difference of 70% negative defense. This is just to let you know that you don't need to aim for more than 10 to 14 stacks of Saliva Dipped. In any case, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, see you next time.